Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on eco-construction techniques. I'm very pleased to have you all here. So I'd like to specify that this webinar will be recorded and will be available on replay. For
the English speakers, please note that this webinar will be recorded, and you will also be able to access to a replay. We have also a simultaneous translation available on the channel. You will find all information on the chat, and for any technical issue, you can also ask your questions on the chat.
So, practical information, if you have any technical issues, sound or whatever, please use the chat, which is on the bottom right. However, for all question to panelists, please use the questions option, which is right next to the chat, just to the left of the chat at the bottom of your screen, bottom right of the screen. So I suggest we get underway, and welcome to this second webinar on the Thursdays of Eco-Construction, co-organized by the FFEM and the EDEM in partnership with the Ministry for Ecological Transition. These webinars are part of a long-term undertaking of our institutions through a variety of programs, which I could mention about the energy efficiency program, Caprico, FAR, and many others. And there are many other projects led by AFD. We'll be discussing some of them later. And of course, the goal is to promote the reduction of climate impact in a sector that represents 1/5 of all climate gas emissions, and also to adapt to make our built environment more comfortable, to reduce energy use for users and their bills as well, using local materials that are also low carbon, and to mobilize local supply chains, and as well as training and employment. So this webinar it arrives at a specific time frame with the COP30 that's going on in Belém and Rio, and also the 10-year marker after the Great Paris Agreements. There's also the Chaillot Declaration signed by 70 countries. So it's really a pleasure for us to bring all of these topics together at this very unique junction. There are three key themes that we'll be addressing, that have emerged by discussions with about 30 experts and practitioners in the field, which have allowed us to look at three key points or lever spots that we've been adapting, which we've identified that despite many efforts and projects we support, these are perhaps why eco-construction is still marginal to the building sector. So the goal of these three webinars is to look at what means are possible for eco-construction to become really a full partner in the construction section, full place in the construction sector. In the second webinar, we'll be addressing training at every level, and we'll be looking at three specific questions that will be debated here today by our speakers today. First question: what is the value and what are skills necessary for the job market in eco-construction? How can we put these forward and recognize these skills for professionals in the field? A second question will be how to train people for working in eco-construction. What's specific about this kind of training at various levels for various actors and partners? And a third issue will be how can we pool resources to develop skills in eco-construction. So I think this will be a very exciting discussion. And so for this second webinar, it's our colleague, Alix Menard from the Education, Training, Higher Education and Employment Division, who will be our moderator. And I will be back to speak again about conclusions and the next and final webinar. So we'll have 1.5 hours of fascinating discussions, and I will now leave the floor to Alix. A good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. And thank you for entrusting the moderation of the second warm to me, which is devoted to training in e-construction. And I'm from the Education, Training, Higher Education and Employment Division at AFD. We're going to be examining a very key question, how to train men and women who will make the transition into eco-construction in the building sector real. Craftspeople, decision makers, craftspeople, and so on. We'll have several speakers with us today from various backgrounds. They are researchers, trainers, technical partners who will have an exchange of viewpoints from Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa. Specifically, we have Hélène Sabatier-Aconor, who is an agricultural engineer by training, and she's also been head of the Europe and International Development Department section of the ADEM, where she works on issues related to energy access, efficiency, renewable energies, and fighting climate change in Sub-Saharan Africa. Hélène is also particularly interested in the need to take climate conditions into account in construction, particularly the specific characteristics of hot and tropical countries, which require a tailored approach to the design of buildings and public spaces. Hélène has also coordinated the ADEM programs TKOO, mentioned by Orly earlier, and Sen Abak as well. We also have with us today Ulrich Hungbeji. He is a coordinator for Africa and head of the training section of the Nubian Arch Association. Ulrich oversees the implementation of technical training and capacity building programs in West Africa in order to support the development of an inclusive and adapted program to local resources. Your field experience will really give us a cognition of how these trainings can contribute to structuring to developing eco-construction in a sustainable way. I'm very pleased as well to introduce Olivier Moll, who's a lecturer and researcher at the National School of Architecture of Grenoble, part of the Grenoble University, and a member of the research unit on architecture, environment, and building cultures. And he's also the head of the housing program of Crater. Also with us today, Vincent Kitio, an architect and head of renewable energies and energy efficiency in the built environment. Vincent is the head of the Energy and Urban Planning Unit at UN Habitat, working on promoting sustainable construction in urban areas and deploying renewable energy technologies. You implement transformational projects for the clean environment and economical building and energy economical building. You also work on carbon neutral construction materials and the construction of resilient, affordable, and adapted public housing. We're also pleased to have with us today Ibrahim Nyong, a materials engineer, a researcher, trainer, and consultant specializing in sustainable construction. Ibrahim's thesis focused on the development of eco-friendly components adapted to the Senegalese context, notably promoting the use of Tifa australis and earthenware, raw earth, to reduce carbon footprint. He's also the technical director of the AARMBN since 2018 and supports the Co-Energy Environment Lab at the Polytechnic of the University of Diop in Dakar. And finally, Alexandre, our colleague, who is now project team manager and vocational training coordinator within AFD's Education, Training, Higher Education and Employment Division. And you will be presenting the experience of the AFD in funding of skills development in eco-construction through presentation of a number of projects led in the Comoros, Madagascar, and Mauritania. And we'll be happy to hear from you on this topic. Thank you so much, Alix. So I'm the coordinator of funding for continuing education. I'm not going to be able to present this in a full manner, but we will be able to have 3 brief examples and leave the floor to the other experts you introduced. But simply to give these concrete examples to what already said earlier is the question about the skills. We're looking at every level of training, including higher education, with 2 examples that we had in our division at AFD. In Madagascar, we've accompanied at the University of Réunion, where there's a master. It's France Education, International French Education, which is a master's degree at the University of Réunion at the Master Eben, but it's being taught in Madagascar. So it's with a Réunion University, but located in Madagascar. And with this training, we look at the eco-design aspect. Another aspect that we have is through PICOBAT in Mauritania, and this is a more technical assistance through the PICOBAT program financed by AFD and the European Union. It's 865 young people who have been trained and developing an ecosystem of small and micro enterprises around eco-construction as a sector where skills are valued, and skills make it possible to develop employment insertion programs and entrepreneurship with the implementation, as we will speak during this webinar, of school work sites. So work sites that are training venues in themselves. So we've been working in 4 regions in Mauritania. The other way in which we can really lever our expertise is we can see in the Comores, and I think Aurélie would also mention that in the 3rd webinar with public funding. So I'm sorry, the amount, something in the thousands of euros, tens of thousands of euros, about 40 schools in the Comores. They've been primary, second and lower and upper secondary schools. And we've allowed the re-dynamization of these training, these stabilized earthenware bricks. And so all of the work that's been done in these schools, we're basing ourselves on the National Housing Agency, which is responsible for developing that supply chain of compressed and stabilized earthenware bricks, and then developing work sites. And I think we'll get back to this, the valorization of these building techniques that are modern and high quality, and that also will encourage development of the entire branch. So in our division at AFD, we have a bit ability to really give value to these skills in eco-construction. And I give the floor back to Alex. Thank you so much, Alexander, for clarifying AFD's initiatives. And it really demonstrates that developing competent skills is really essential to entering the employment market. And so this is actually the first theme of our roundtable. And we will try to respond to the question, what is the value of green building skills in the job market? And so to introduce this first session, I'd like to give the floor to Olivier Moll. We can come have a look at the French experience and what we can learn from them for other contexts. Good morning, afternoon, evening, and thank you so much for the interest you have in this field and for inviting us on. So for the last 46 years, the Crater Association has been working in a tight collaboration with various research labs on sustainable building techniques by promoting earthenwork building techniques. We've been developing sustainable agriculture styles that are adaptable and valuable for climate change. So we've been developing the techniques, training in them at every level. And also we've been looking at developing the capacity to prove scientifically the value of this knowledge and then to promote it to various actors in the sector. So local architecture and what's advantageous about it, about local materials, is it is the knowledge that's actually the property of the local population. And so those of us who have university degrees, we need to really adapt a learner's mind to adapt ourselves to these practices. And once we've learned about these techniques, we can think about how they might be used or reinterpreted, how complementary they are with new materials and new technology, how to use the right material, the right knowledge in the right place. This approach has allowed us to develop methods and tools such that everyone interested in this approach can, if they desire to do so, can benefit from our experience. The next step is to document our knowledge and make that knowledge available to everyone. We want to develop practical guides, technical documents that allow us to have standards and to have scientific research to validate local knowledge. An example here on the left, we're working on a vibrating table, a seismic table for a building project in Haiti, whence the need for partnership with the research sector. Again, it became necessary to demonstrate concretely really how we can build with these materials in a logic of responding to the evolving needs of populations. Here's a photo is the earthenwork building in Villefontaine in the Lyon region of France, which was realized with various building techniques and allowed us to really to validate these techniques for contemporary construction of buildings for collective housing. It's also important to develop tools that will be beneficial to various actors in this sector. It's also important to share knowledge and to teach at all levels, with specific attention to practical training, which allows for the connecting up of people with local knowledge as well as more technical knowledge. This we have a photo of work in Grenoble as well as a practical material. So to summarize, we're able to associate research, action, training, and sharing of knowledge. We've really support existing heritage, working with local materials and showing the potential of these materials. Today, there are a lot of resources and trainings available. Many of them are available. We can mention the National Association of Earth Construction Professionals. There's also ASTER and the Federation of Associations of Training Associations in Eco-Construction. And these are licensed to provide training in the sector. More recently, in just the last couple of years, we have participated in the implementation of an ECOVET, is a center of a skills center, which allows to provide training and on-site activities, which allows for the certification Acquis Terre, which is recognized by 11 countries in the European Union. There are 9 learning units using load bearing and covering of walls. And there are these levels of European certification levels from 2 to 5, with a level of indicators that will allow for the person to have their skills appreciated. And this kind of approach might be useful for countries in West Africa, which facilitates mobility of students from one country to another to benefit from these knowledge and training. You give the floor back to Alix, who thanks Olivier for a very in-depth presentation, and thank you for introducing these various professions based on European certification. But we'd like to continue now with the role of building managers who have an important role to play in eco-construction in Europe and in sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a pleasure now to give the floor to Hélène Sapetier-Aconor, working with ADEME. The floor to you. Thank you so much, and good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone. Just a few words to contextualize the work of the ADEME on this topic. ADEME was working on these questions for quite a number of years. In particular, has gained important experience in building in tropical environments, particularly with the French overseas territories, Reunion, French Polynesia, and the Caribbean islands. So really to understand eco-construction in this kind of environment. All of that work is being adapted to West Africa in particular, and concretely in Senegal. So when we're talking about eco-construction, we're also, it's not just about technical questions about which technical choices we'll be using, but also a question of ecosystem of actors. Since we're all concerned with eco-construction, and particularly with regard to housing. So in that ecosystem of actors, there are 2 categories that play important problems and that are complementary roles, which are real estate developers on the one side, and the other side are the financing structures. Why real estate developers? Because they are in the field and are oftentimes are the driving forces behind implementation of eco-construction. They might play that role in 3 different ways. On one hand, they can integrate sustainability into projects by implementing bioclimatic design concepts, by making the choice to use local materials with a low carbon footprint and biosourced supplies, for example, or also and as well as integrating renewable energies, in particular solar power, in the energy use of the buildings. The developers also have the capacity, because they are working both on the offer and the demand sides, they can create a market for green skills. They can demand the use of trained craftspeople in ecological techniques. They are also able to collaborate with vocational schools and universities working on the topics, and they're also capable of contributing to promoting new fields or professions. They are also change actors in their capacity to build large volumes, and they can demonstrate the interest and benefits of eco-construction, particularly with regard to savings over long term, and also the value of the durability of the buildings, not to mention comfort. They're also capable of raising awareness among customers and partners, and also serve as showcases for new practices. There's no point having these excellent buildings and that are really excellent examples, but not be able to touch them. So it's very important to be able to see them, visit them. What we see here is a building on the campus of the university in Dakar, and that's been receiving several thousand students for quite a few years. So this was a very significant engagement to use eco-materials and to use various techniques with natural ventilation and shading techniques and so on. We can see these techniques all brought together here. So when we're talking about real estate developers, this is important, and we can also have the role of local parties. In Senegal, the choice was made. The departmental council made the choice of having clean building techniques and using earth and bricks, and also demonstrates the importance of the implication of a major actor in any given territory. So for the next slide, to talk about technical and financial partners, and they play really a role of structuring and as being catalysts, because they can fund and support innovation. They can fund pilot projects and building example buildings. They can have green funding and various guarantees for sustainable developers. This can be climate funding and so on, a whole variety of options. They also can do capacity building with regard to techniques. They can support professional training, craftspeople, engineers, architects. They can support research on local materials, as well as using labels and certification. They are also change actors because they support standards, green standards, and can really accompany states in sustainable urban planning. In Senegal specifically, there's the promotion of climate-sensitive building. We're working with Senegalese authorities, and there's a national program which has a roadmap. There's also a roadmap for Ghana, as well as on other continents and elsewhere in Africa. With regard to technical skills, there's also an initiative in Senegal supported by various funders, a cooperation from Luxembourg, Belgium, France. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Using European funds to contribute to professional training on a sector basis, in particular with regard to sustainable construction, and there's been significant attention to sustaining the use of dry earth, and there's a time limit. So we're terribly sorry to have to cut you off. So just a conclusion from Hélène. These approaches are complementary, and the actors on all levels are very important with regard to training, and they really need to be constantly questioned on these topics because they are in the field and implementing these programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This was very interesting. Now, Mr. Vincent Kitio is going to. Vincent is the next speaker. Vincent, perhaps your microphone is not on. Good afternoon, all. Before I start, I'd like to thank FFEM and AFD for involving us in this very important webinar on eco-construction. For us, it is a key element at UN Habitat. UN Habitat, in fact, is the UN agency handling the promotion of human habitats. In particular, it does focus on sustainable urban development and access for all to a decent housing. Now, to set the context and to contribute to what Olivier and Hélène said a while ago, I must say that today in the world, we are facing 4 challenges, major challenges. And these challenges are characterized indeed by, in the global south, with extremes to which that need to be addressed. First of all, I would like to start with a tremendous urban growth, which is linked to urban-rural drift, and also the demographic growth, which is really important in sub-Saharan Africa, to the tune of 3.5%. We have also an urbanization which is not followed by adequate construction and housing, and the majority of urban dwellers are in informal dwellings. And combined to that is the housing crisis. SDGs promise to provide every citizen in the world a decent world by 2030. However, figures are showing us to do so, we need to build over 230 million housing units. This is in sub-Saharan Africa by 2030. To this, one has to add growing unemployment among the youth. More than 70% of sub-Saharan population is aged below 30, and most of these youth, some are trained, are in the informal sector or simply unemployed. This does create a crisis, a governance crisis in global South countries. With the Gen Z generation, we did witness how governments are looking for employment for this youth. And one has to add to that the climate crisis, which today is impacting everyone, whether you're talking about the global South, which are more impacted, because they lack resources to address the consequences of climate change, flooding due to the lack of infrastructure. All these 4 challenges that I have highlighted, one can say that the solution could be to find a common denominator that around eco-construction. This is why we believe that eco-construction does have some solutions in order to overcome the challenges. One has to start with a planning, construction of decent housing, and also we need to a mass production of housing. This is very important. and it's also important for the north. And we need also to decarbonize construction using local material with low carbon emission, as mentioned earlier by Hélène. That is the design of the buildings and the architectures using low carbon materials and natural materials. Next slide, please. Please, I just wanted to conclude by saying that it is very important indeed. This is a theme that would allow us to answer very quickly. If we invest, and we invest all the necessary energies into promoting eco-construction, and in the next intervention, I will mention a couple of solutions that UN Habitat is promoting with our partners in order to respond to these challenges, these 4 crises, as I have already mentioned, that are indeed considered as major challenges of the 21st century. Thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you for having highlighted this and mentioning the challenges, and I will give you back the floor in a while. We now have a concrete case presented by Mr. Ulrich Humbeji, who will show us the Benin example. Ulrich, you have the floor. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, the previous speakers. I did really follow very keenly all the presentations, and I'm very happy and feel privileged to take part in this webinar. The Nubian Arc Association is a solidarity association created 25 years ago by Thomas Kralier and Siri Ibu, who is from Burkina Faso. And who have worked on many workplaces. We want to have to popularize the Nubian Arc Association building techniques without iron and many other materials that are not really needed for this Nubian Arc architecture and construction. We also popularize our techniques in the rural areas who have some needs and who are confronted with the impact of climate change. It is in a way of contributing to reducing the various impact of climate change or mitigating them. We are in 7 countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Mauritania, where we have technical partners, and we intend to go beyond that to North Togo, Chad, North Cameroon, and Niger, wherever we feel the need does exist. In Benin, as it is the Benin experience that I'm presenting here, we intervene in the northern part of Benin in Atakura, Alibori, and Borgu through the training and employment of rural youth in eco-construction trades. And these training are short trainings because the trainees are farmers and illiterate youth, but who have already a job and want to improve their financial situation. And it is context-based training because we are doing it during the dry season, which allows these beneficiaries to carry on our activities that we usually undertake and to have additional revenue sources during the dry season. This is a technique which is implemented or adopted in areas where you have very low rainfall in order to facilitate the construction and also to show how necessary it is in the northern areas where the weather is very dry and hot. Two trades. We are interested in two kind of trades. The builders, mason, of the Nubian eco-construction and the Nubian Vault eco-construction mason. For the duration of the training, we have 3 construction seasons equivalent to 18 months or 6 months per season. And for the second, it's a training duration of 4 construction seasons equivalent to 24 months or 6 months per season. These trades or professions are being formalized or institutionalized and in order to abide by the norms and standards of the government, in the French-speaking area. We have the support of the government to come up with develop documents that can allow for the training and we have skill reference framework or training reference framework, assessment reference framework, and teaching guide. All this does give the pedagogical framework and assessment framework for the training. And it is a dual program, 80% on-site training and real construction sites supervised by master craftsmen, and 20% in the vocational training schools through some school settings that have been created in the area. Now, 2 types of certifications are provided. What we call a certification by VAE, where you need to have the level of a certificate of professional qualifications for those learners who are illiterate. We also have another certification, professional qualification, to avoid the language becoming a barrier. We have this kind of module. We have also a higher certification by accreditation by the CPQ, and this training can be pursued through the training in collaboration with vocational training schools. We do apologize, and perhaps we need to conclude and come back in the Q&A session. Yes, I was saying that these trainings are provided by the vocational training schools in collaboration with artisan masonry associations. And yes, that's about it. Thank you. Thank you, Ulrich. Your reflection on the added value on the market is indeed very important. We are going to come back to it in the second part of our workshop, how to train efficiently in eco-construction at all levels. And we are privileged and we have the honor to welcome Mr. Ibrahim Young, who are going to tell us 2 manners in training in eco-construction. So Ibrahim, without further ado, you have the floor. Thank you very much for giving me the floor to present my experience in terms of training. And it will have 2 levels. First of all, to have upper education based on research, and to see to it that there is a virtuous circle of research, training, and innovation, so that curricula can be enriched by innovation, recent innovation in using material, and later on, when they exercise their profession, they can implement these solutions. And this can go through, first of all, by having training and pedagogical material. Before I talked about material, I think we need to know that these future architects must know how we can design a building without taking on board the specificity of the area. And this is the basic. And then we have modules on the building materials. It is already the case in the Dakar Architecture School. And in this, what we teach students is, depending on the territory, what are the raw material, how to identify them, how to use blocks and earth blocks and so on, how we validated through the implementation. Ibrahim, perhaps Ibrahim has been cut off. We don't hear Ibrahim any longer. I do hope Ibrahim will be able to reconnect. Yes, now we can hear you. You were cut off for a couple of seconds. Ibrahim, we lost you. We've lost you again. Now I can hear you. I was speaking about materials. Now, the energy management, when we talked about buildings, engineers must be able, in a position to take on board the sustainability element, and the last element is to the analysis and to how to map up the impact on the environment of the product use, which is extremely important. With regard to the bridge building between research and training and construction, it's already the case. Once again, we have lost Ibrahim, unfortunately. I do suggest that we move on to the next presentation. Vincent, while after Ibrahim's intervention, perhaps you are going to present us with needs in terms of training and massification of training. We'll come back and revert to Ibrahim whenever possible. Thank you very much, Alex, for giving me back the floor. From the onset, I would like to recall the context. Sub-Saharan Africa is faced with several challenges, specifically in terms of experts in architecture and building construction. According to the World Bank data, more than 80% of housing in Africa are built without the intervention of any architect. And generally speaking, plot owners are the ones who build, or masons and other masons who have been trained on the job. And when you look at the number of architects, one note that for 100 and 200,000 inhabitants, we have one architect. This is very worrying. And this does also explain the proliferation of indecent housing and shanty towns, because we do not have the appropriate number of experts. architecture schools are being created very recently. For example, the African School of Trees of Urbanism based in Lomé, which trains architects and urban engineers for 14 French-speaking African countries. This does justify why, in order to respond to the challenges of housing, we need to train experts, and we must go further, deeper, how to train non-architects. There are many documentation and training material that have been developed already. One of them is Barefoot Architect, as the title says, how we can promote bioclimatic architecture. This manual does propose very simple solutions, allowing to improve the building, current building, while focusing on eco-construction. UN Habitat, among its projects, is targeting, is trying to promote the training of non-architects and also architects, and to move into mass construction, mass building. We have to involve current actors and stakeholders in the area. So we have organized a number of training sessions, and together with our partners, we have developed guides that allow us to build houses and housing units that are low in carbon emission, low energy also. So we need to train masons, and it is a necessity today, because if we want to industrialize the building sector, we need qualified personnel to do so. We need also access to energy, because without energy it will be very difficult indeed to have mass construction projects, as the challenges are tremendous, and the housing crisis remains a major challenge indeed. As an example, the Switzerland Cooperation funded a project in Rwanda to promote employment through construction, climate-friendly construction based on all which value chains with low carbon material. The design of a building, the design is done together with occupying owners, and the youth are trained in the techniques, and we can see some informal neighborhood being transformed into modern neighborhood, and most of the youth who have been trained can build housing for a greater number of people. And in doing so, we believe that not only this is a value for money, it is sustainable because it does adhere to climate and standards. We believe that these are solutions to be promoted. It is therefore a project that is seen as very interesting by many African countries because it does involve youth in the projects, and it does also create employment and also affordable housing, ecological housing, and low carbon housing. I think I will stop here for the time being. Thank you, Vincent. for this presentation including all the value chain of the building. Now, yes, we do have an approach that a market-oriented approach. First of all, to create the offer to the various trade and professions, people like technicians and entrepreneurs and architects. And the second pillar is supporting demand through awareness raising and supporting for rural families wishing to build using Nubian art techniques, and also to have financial incentive to encourage them. And last pillar is how to develop a favorable environment as through the mobilization and bringing together a group of stakeholders, state, technical, intermediary, financial, and institutional partners at the local and international levels. We have also another approach based on the territorial deployment of a sector, as this is a technique that is primarily focusing on the rural area. We focus on operational partners. That means any farmer association, women association who are based in a certain area, and when they decide to support us in deploying our activities, whether it is at district level, department level, or circle levels, or communal level, which is a lower geographic unit, or whether we can really support the deployment of the various activities that we are undertaking. At district level, the operational partners are called oversees all the other partners in the territory or the area where we deploy our project. And the territorial setting is a higher area than the unit of implementation. The next slide does show the awareness building workshop organized with partners and operational partners. Obviously, there are some principles that we need to abide by, to respect, in order to guarantee a good operational deployment of a training. By that I mean that we must respect apprenticeship training, which is indispensable for the project to be successful. This consists in training the rural youth by local masons and builders, and who are artisans, masons, who are motivated to train. The training must also be decentralized. It must be context-based, because most of these people cannot read or write. So the curricula has pictures and given situation, explanations, and so on. Another principle is the principle of insertion, inclusiveness. The training is not meant to train people who will have no job after the training. They should be able to implement what they have learned. They are inserted because they have some clients. As soon as they finish the training, they find already there are two challenges that we need to be mindful of. we have to take on board the specificity, the characteristics of a rural area with illiterate people. So the training must also be next to their residence, and we have to support them, financial support for learners, so that they can have some allowances as incentive, almost equivalent to what they will have earned while working. And the language should not be an obstacle. So the pictograms and language use is the local language. And also there's a need to support the market as it is in an emerging sector, and there is still a lack of companies and job opportunities. So financial incentives for eco-construction should be deployed, as well as the deployment of community building and supporting
Thank you so much for underlining the need for accompaniment for training and self-employment. I think Mr. Ibrahimian was supposed to come in on the training aspects, but I think if he can maybe not use his camera, then his bandwidth should be adequate. So thank you. I will drop training, but I'll discuss accompanying entrepreneurs. There's the question of value creation, and in the first section, you need to structure the ecosystem. So first, you have to cartograph the various actors. There are various actors. So first of all, there's in Senegal is a case I know well. So you have people who are harvesting, and then there are people who are preparing materials, and then there are the development of the materials themselves. So we need to map these various actors. They're in any territory. There are available materials. There are particular technical concerns, and so on. So when you're working on a bioclimatic concept and design, you need to be aware of these. We also have to encourage synergy, perhaps clusters in which there will be small businesses, architecture firms, craftspeople. So the people who make the materials, those who design them, those who supply them, and they be sure that the use of the materials will not pose any problems. And next concern is capacity building. So in addressing the entrepreneurial spirit, it's really important to have we need financial models or economic models such that their activity be durable over time. So we really need an eco-construction sector that can last through time throughout West Africa. For that, there exist incubators and accelerators that have started to work. There are small companies that have benefited from being accompanied by a specific structure the interpreter did not hear. And the small company has been producing adequate materials. This has functioned very well. As an example, we need to see now how it can work on a larger scale throughout West Africa. My two last points are the relative to financing. How to fund these entrepreneurs such that they can grow their business, increase their productive capacity, and certify their products, because that's really an important issue. How you have developed local components for eco-building, how can you guarantee their quality? So perhaps on this front, maybe we'd have local laboratories that can examine them, certify them, and so on. And the final issue is relative to visibility, because we have platforms that can put forward entrepreneurs with interesting promos. This will allow construction actors to know who they can turn to when they are actually building one of their projects. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. This was very, very clear, and I hope we'll be able to come back to your presentation later on if we have any time left. But to recall everyone, as well as the people who are listening to us, that you can ask questions, which is located in the question tab on the bottom right of your screen, just next to chat. So chat's for technical issues. Questions is for questions to the speakers. So to the third section of our roundtable are what are the means that we can use to mutualize and develop skills relative to e-construction. And I would like to now come back to Mr. Olivier Men, who will be talking about various French and European networks that do this kind of work. Or at least those that I know, says Olivier. So it's clear that the dynamics around promoting eco-construction, local, geosourced, low carbon materials requires a great deal of investment by actors in the sector. We can mention, for instance, ASTER, which is a national association of earthwork builders, or the which consists of several entities, and the networking of these actors is really participates in promoting local knowledge and the use of these techniques, thanks to their mobilization, but also public policy element that's really essential for us. We need synergy with the training and research sectors as well that are participating in this program that's called National Terre, Projet National Terre, which is to really up the recognition and the availability of these techniques. I'm sure that if any actors in France are with us today, you'll recognize yourselves here. These are both cultural, socioeconomic, technical, insurance-based, or reglementary. So this networking is really essential for really moving in the right direction. And I think that's all I wanted to add. Thank you so much. So now, Ibrahim Niang, we'd like to come back to you to talk about networks in sub-Saharan Africa. Excellent. I think it's just really important of structuring an ecosystem for eco-construction. And regionally, we have these Trans-Sahel networks that have been broadcasting their knowledge, sharing their knowledge. And quite recently, last year, there was another program from MIC DAO, which has had a great deal of impact. And what's at stake for me is to not have these networks develop in a too dispersed of a manner. They might have different approaches, and we might have some communication difficulties, but so we really could have, there's a lot of opportunity for synergy. If we can develop a structured network, we do have discussions around this. We're trying to mutualize our skills, practices, and to really increase the scale of these structures. And also an opportunity to resolve problems we all share with regard to funding, equipment, certification, and industrialization. So to summarize, if we can structure a local network, we'll be able to have a much greater impact in the building sector. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. We can see that this creation of networks is essential to support the sharing of knowledge and best practices. And it's also important to have teaching networks that are adapted to circumstances. And now we'll have Hélène having a couple of words on the topic. Indeed. What's really important about training is to bring up local ecosystems of local skills for designing and building and creating eco-durable buildings. We need specific knowledge about local materials, energy efficiency, bioclimatic habitat. So it's very, very important to have varied and complementary educational resources that can meet these needs. A few examples we have here very classically. Theoretical tools such as these kind of training modules that are on site, or the creation of guides or charters like this sustainable building charter that you can hear. I presented a brief guide that we'll make available to you, which is really a toolbox in 3 parts, with one part on notions of bioclimatic building, what's going on in various regions of the world, and one part on case studies of exemplary buildings. And the 3 communicate amongst themselves. So it's a very useful document that I would hope to present to you. There's also a training, on-site training, on-the-job training, which we see here, an example in Senegal with implementation on construction sites. There's also the question of using software that is design assistance or dynamic simulation, such that we can design buildings that react to various climate contexts. So this is software that's free, and particularly called Bâti Pays, which is developed as a decision-making tool that is simple to use. It's a kind of Excel-based and developed for the context of West Africa, that allows as well for the questions of energy efficiency. There were some training sessions just 2 weeks ago in Senegal that were very well received by local actors. There's a website where you can go have a virtual visit of a building. There's open source materials. There's a materials library. And the picture in the middle also shows how useful it is to bring various experts around the same table to work on case studies and develop a shared culture of eco-design, eco-construction, where each party in their different sector can really fully implement these techniques. So basically, the resources have to be adapted to the local context. Local languages, as mentioned earlier, was incredibly critical. Practical tools that can be used and supported by training institutions and local partners, local funding partners. Thank you so much, Hélène. I think, Vincent, if you can wrap up this 3rd question, could you perhaps complement this question of resources via social networks? Your microphone needs to be turned back on. What I simply wanted to add today is that thanks to social networks, they really are a platform, or really kind of a multimedia library, which makes it possible to share skills in an exponential way. And they create connections between masons, craftspeople. There are techniques that social networks allow us to explore. There are also training, online courses, MOOCs, that approach building techniques that are accessible to all. And there are really quite a lot of groups that initiate trainings online on eco-construction. I think this is really very fortunate, because 10 or 15 years ago, to know how to design a house, you had to go to a physical library. But now we're seeing this incredible extension. You can find a video on YouTube from Pakistan where a technique is presented in the local language, but because it's multimedia, it can help a mason who's struggling in a remote village, but who does have access to the internet. They can very quickly master these skills. So I think it's really essential, and we really need, as Ibrahim said earlier, we need to see how this can be regulated or at least streamlined or harmonized, and how we can include this information in existing curricula. I think we saw the experience of the La Voûte, the Nubian vault arch experience, which is incredibly interesting. And I think really everyone locally needs to be able to learn these techniques and then insert them into their local context, because given that the practices and various other techniques, that we can see how these might accelerate training to meet the challenges that we saw at the beginning of the session. So YouTube, Facebook, MOOCs, WhatsApp, all of these platforms are really part of this rich resource that might help us to very quickly meet our goals. Maybe not by 2030, but still maybe by 2050. It really is something that it's important to mention, because it's already changing the daily lives of masons and other builders, even in the most remote areas. Thank you so much, Vincent. And this webinar is intended to be one of those teaching tools that can be shared. Vincent, you mentioned the level of training in professional and technical training. Maybe you, Ibrahim, you could come back to this topic? Yes, of course. So as I was saying in my intervention, we can have a two-level vision, that we would have higher education that's research-oriented. So we would be a sort of a virtuous circle where research will feed training. So students will be aware of the most recent developments in materials and tools. And then when they are in the field working, they can implement those solutions. In order to do that, we have to have developed the notion of bioclimatic building. There was a training 2 weeks ago in Dakar that might serve as a reference point with regard to bioclimatic design. Then there need to be modules on geo and biosourced materials, including identification, labeling, and so on. There's also energy management is very important. A building is an envelope, but that contains systems. So we have environmental goals with regard to energy efficiency. And then there would be, to complete this loop, it would be a life cycle analysis to determine really the various architectural projects, how they functioned over their whole life. So there's also the value of creating connections between research laboratories, demonstration projects, and worksite schools. It's really important to participate in scientific development and to kind of prefigure standards. In the absence of norms, the only tools we'd have would be from theses written by in various fields, for instance, as we await the implementation or the creation of standards. This has already started in several countries. There are projects that are that have been developed, and we're hoping to move them forward. The second level is technical and professional training. This is really on-the-ground training. So the idea is to train actors for the techniques in question. So there will be building supervisors who might be concerned about who's trained, So, for instance, there have been schools that have been developed to train students who already have skills in stonemasonry, for instance, or electricity or other building trades, and then to orient their skills toward specifically eco-construction techniques. And in addition to that, we hope to develop collaborations with local funders, local structures, government structures, and so on. And afterwards, the students will be able to promote low-tech solutions to local issues. So this is an approach to training that has really been showing its results, and I think that we can adapt it. Thank you.
Now, I do suggest we move on to question and answers. We still have a couple of minutes to take some questions. There's a question addressed to Olivier in the chat. Can you hear me? Yes, I did look at the exchanges and questions, and perhaps we can also allow some comments. So there's a question of a link between the recycling sector and eco-construction, because when you recycle waste, this could be a raw material for eco-construction. Do you handle this kind of aspect of recycling? This is very interesting comment. And also there's a question with regard to individuals who want to build. Can they have some training if they want to build their own house based on eco-construction techniques? There's also there are some requests for resources and documentation, and I'm sure that our colleagues and speakers will share documents and resources, specifically the document entitled the Treaty on Eco-Construction. I did answer this question in another chat. On the Crater website, there are many resources and many documents that can be freely downloaded. Unfortunately, the treaty does not belong to us. It is being sold. If you can contact us, we can simply have access to it via internet and possibly buy it. There's a question on the linkage with recycled material. Yes, may I give an answer on this? Indeed, I wanted to say that there are a lot of experiences in this sector of recycled material. For example, plastic. We see more and more entrepreneurs who are recycling plastic mixed with sand and to have paving material. Here in Nairobi, the demand is very high on that. So this is one solution. Another solution could be during building construction, one can use the earth, which traditionally was considered as a waste. We can use this and transform it into our building material. We call this, indeed, resource recuperation. That is a circular economy. And the experience that I showed you on the Kigali project, in fact, we use agricultural waste as a fuel for burning the bricks. So this is a waste which was usually burned. Now it is being used in ovens. This can be waste resulting from coffee plantations, and all these are reused, and also biomass materials such as trees, plants are being reused to make sustainable construction material. Yeah, I just wanted to say that we, in terms of adding value to recycled material, we had some exchange with ProPlast, an enterprise in Senegal, which is very well known, recycling plastic to make windows frames out of it. And also our training module, there's also a module on polymer. In the building, there are several techniques, VRD and canalization, and using primary material and secondary material to be recycled. So we are focusing on mason training, because this is very important. But in the building construction, plastic is more recycled and used. Perhaps we should be prudent, because some of these materials, we have to be mindful of the quality of these materials being recycled. Being recycled does not necessarily mean it's the best solution. There are many constraints in terms of material quality to have durable material. So we have to be vigilant on what we use and how we qualify the material we are using in the building. May I add, I thought it will also be interesting to build with a recyclable material, easily recyclable material. So, and this will avoid recycling whatever has been already dumped as a waste. Not all materials are easy to recycle. This is important to take into account in training architects. Yes, this was part of our project where some of the remaining material in the building site could be reused, but it is not always as easy as that and as optimal as that. It is only remaining 3 minutes before we conclude this webinar. Oh, there was a question. Unfortunately, we cannot answer this question about individual wishing or wanting to build their own house. Well, in relation to individual, particularly, whoever requests our technique can have, we can make it available to them, because we have all kind of clients, farmers, rural dwellers, people from the diaspora. It all depends on their interest, and we make it the technique available freely to them. And the expert to support you could be a mason, artisan mason, and so on. Thank you, Rich. I'm so sorry we have to cut you off, as we no longer have time. I was very flexible, but the rules of the game are to abide by our timing. Thank you very much. We are now concluding. I must say that it was extremely rich. I did note 3 main things in terms of stakes, that is the pyramid of age of the employment of a youth and the need for housing in Africa are some of the contexts that are favorable for eco-construction. So this is an opportunity to seize, and also on training the fundamental role, not necessarily about all levels of eco-construction, but all type of stakeholders, masons, scientists, architects, higher education graduate, and this the word of companionship was used. It is therefore to have a virtuous circle of trainers from the crafts women and men with mason operators, architects, scientists, material manufacturers, so that this kind of cluster, as mentioned by Ibrahim, can properly work. And the third stake that I noted, there are many others, obviously, and it was recalled by Helen, the value chain of public construction demand, so that all the people involved can benefit from this training. And this will be going into the next webinar of scaling up. We had a concrete example of Kigali, a project in Kigali. It was also very interesting to recall some of the challenges and the risks to avoid, the risk of fragmentation of initiatives. And this does show the richness that we have so many initiatives. We try to be as inclusive as possible with speakers around the table, actors from the global south and global north, and also the interests of sharing resources and diversifying actors and profiles around the table, and to cross-reference all the experiences and use digital tools, as recalled by Vincent, in order to access to some feedback on experiences and also to be able to share via web and digital platforms. In our experience at we will put the conclusion of this webinar on our website. It will be possible to access through replay. This was as a conclusion. I would like to thank all our panelists. I would also like to thank Alex for the moderation and all the technical team of FFEM and Sacha, who really played a great role in the organization of this webinar. Elizabeth and Severin, who also ensure that everything is working properly. The next webinar will be on Thursday, 20 November, to talk about changing perceptions and amplifying the impact of eco-construction, awareness, communication, and scaling up. And we'll have a rich panel. Please go to the replay. Thank you very much, and see you soon. And all the best in eco-construction. Thank you very much.